Bavaria, Germany, September 17, 1944. Lieutenant James Robert Harrison's B-17 Flying Fortress is dying. The number 3 engine is streaming black smoke. The number 4 is completely dead, and hydraulic fluid is painting red streaks across the fuselage. Through the shattered cockpit window, he can see the Bavarian countryside rising up too fast. The autumn forests a blur of gold and green that will become his grave in approximately 90 seconds. He is 24 years old from Montana, where his family runs cattle across land so vast you can ride for a day without seeing a neighbor. He has completed 18 missions over Germany, needs 7 more to rotate home. But the flak over Regensburg has decided his war will end today, one way or another. The bailout bell rings. His crew is jumping. James stays at the controls, fighting to give them altitude. Precious seconds for parachutes to open. When the last man clears the aircraft, he finally releases the yoke and reaches for his own chute harness. The B-17 rolls inverted. James is thrown against the ceiling. His head strikes metal. The world becomes fragments. Sky, earth, pain, darkness. He wakes in a hayloft, wrapped in blankets that smell of sheep and smoke, with a German woman pressing cold cloth to his forehead and whispering in broken English, "You are safe. I hide you. You are safe." It is the beginning of a debt that will take 8 years to repay. The strategic air campaign over Germany in 1944 was brutal arithmetic. The 8th Air Force was flying deep penetration raids against industrial targets, facing German fighters in flak that destroyed bombers with mechanical efficiency. Crew survival rates were statistically grim. A 25-mission tour had approximately 50% completion rate. Half of the men flying over Germany would not return. James Harrison had beaten odds through 18 missions. Berlin, Schweinfurt, Ploesti, targets that had names that meant death to bomber crews. His B-17, which his crew had named Montana Sky in nostalgic reference to home, had brought them back every time with varying degrees of damage. But Regensburg had been different. The mission briefing had warned of heavy defenses around the Messerschmitt factory. What they hadn't warned about was the new German tactic. Fighters equipped with rockets attacking bomber formations from outside machine gun range. Montana Sky had taken a rocket hit that sheared off the number 4 engine completely and damaged number 3 critically. James had ordered bailout over Bavaria, knowing the crew would become prisoners of war, but calculating that was better than death in a burning aircraft. He had stayed at controls longer than necessary, the pilot's instinct to save his crew overriding self-preservation. The crash itself was fragmented in his memory. Trees rushing up, wings shearing off, the fuselage cartwheeling across a meadow before coming to rest against a stone wall. He had been thrown clear somehow, parachute half deployed, consciousness flickering. What he remembered clearly was waking in the hayloft with the woman hovering over him with expression of terrified determination. She was perhaps 35, with dark hair pulled back severely, wearing the practical clothing of a farm woman. Her hands were rough from work but gentle as she checked the gash on his forehead. "Wie heißen Sie?" she asked, then corrected herself into English. "What is your name?" "James. Lieutenant James Harrison, United States Army Air Forces." He was supposed to give only name, rank, and serial number, but this woman wasn't military. She was civilian who, for reasons he didn't yet understand, was choosing to hide an enemy airman rather than turning him over to authorities. "I am Clara Weber. You are hurt, but you live. The airplane," she gestured vaguely, "is broken. Far from here. I bring you to Barn. You must hide. Germans search for American pilots." Her English was halting but comprehensible, learned from school years before the war. James's situation became clear over the next hours as shock wore off and rational thought returned. He had a severe concussion, 3 cracked ribs, a badly sprained ankle, and numerous lacerations. He was in no condition to evade across Germany to Switzerland or Allied lines. He couldn't walk without assistance. He would be captured within hours if he tried to escape. Clara explained the situation in her careful English. "My farm is on Klein, small, far from village, 3 kilometers. My husband is soldier, Russia. 2 years I have no letter. I think he is dead, but Wehrmacht says missing. I am alone here with daughter Anna. She is 8 years old. You're risking your life hiding me," James said. "If they find me here, you'll be executed for harboring an enemy." "Yes, I know this." She said it simply, without drama. "But you are wounded. To give you to Wehrmacht when you cannot walk, cannot defend, this is not right. You are enemy of Deutschland, yes, But you are also human, also someone's son. This matters more than war. It was moral clarity that transcended national loyalties, expressed by a woman who had every reason to hate American bombers that were destroying German cities. James would later reflect that this moment of grace, a German woman choosing human decency over ideological allegiance, would reshape his understanding of morality and courage. "How long can you hide me?" he asked. "Until you can walk. Then you must go. To Switzerland, perhaps. Or wait for Americans to come here. They bomb München. They must be close, yes?" She was wrong about that. In September 1944, Allied forces were still fighting in France and the Low Countries. Bavaria wouldn't see ground combat for another 7 months. But James didn't correct her. She was risking enough without knowing the full scope of what she was undertaking. Over the following days, a routine developed. Clara would bring food to the hayloft twice daily: black bread, thin soup, occasionally an egg or piece of sausage, food she clearly couldn't spare but shared anyway. Her daughter Anna knew there was an American in the barn, but had been instructed to tell no one, a secret she guarded with the seriousness of children who understand adult stakes. James began to understand the full measure of Clara's courage. She was protecting him not from abstract authority but from neighbors, from local Nazi Party officials who might inspect her farm, from the very real possibility of being denounced and executed. The first crisis came on the 5th day when a Wehrmacht patrol stopped at the farm. James heard voices in the farmyard, then Clara's calm responses to questions he couldn't understand. He pressed himself into the corner of the hayloft, behind bales of hay, barely breathing despite the pain in his ribs. The barn door opened. Boots on the ladder. A soldier's head appeared at the hayloft entrance, looking around perfunctorily. James's hand found a pitchfork, knowing it was useless against rifles but gripping it anyway with the desperation of cornered prey. The soldier glanced around the hayloft, saw hay bales and farming equipment, found nothing suspicious. He descended without thorough search, called out something in German to his companions. Moments later, the patrol left. Clara climbed up after they were gone. She was shaking, all the fear she had hidden from the soldiers now visible. "They look for American pilots," she said quietly. "They know airplane crashed near here. They search all farms. I tell them I see nothing, hear nothing. They believe me because I am woman alone. No important. You're more important than you know," James said. "You just saved my life. Not yet, you still here. Still danger." She was right. The patrol would return. Other patrols would come. Every day James remained increased risk to Clara and Anna, but his ankle was still too swollen to walk, his ribs too painful to allow rapid movement. He was trapped by his own body's betrayal. That night, Clara brought a radio to the barn, an illegal act in itself, as civilians were prohibited from listening to foreign broadcasts. She tuned it to BBC, keeping volume barely audible. The news was in English: Allied forces advancing in France, Soviet armies pushing through Poland, bombing campaigns over Germany intensifying. "You hear?" she said. "Your people are winning. This is good. War will end soon. Germany has lost, this is clear. But until then, we survive. You, me, Anna. We survive together, yes?" It was packed between unlikely allies. German woman and American pilot united by simple goal of staying alive until sanity returned to Europe. James extended his hand. Clara shook it formally, sealing agreement that transcended armies and ideologies. "When this war ends," James said impulsively, "I'll come back. I'll repay this debt. You owe nothing. This is human to human, not American to German. Even so, I'll come back." Over the following weeks, James's physical condition improved slowly. The concussion symptoms faded. His ribs healed enough that he could move without gasping. His ankle remained problematic but became weight-bearing. More significantly, he and Clara developed communication that transcended her limited English and his non-existent German. They talked during her evening visits when Anna was asleep and the farmyard was quiet. Clara spoke about her life before the war. She had been a teacher in Regensburg, met her husband Franz at a cultural event, married in 1935 before the worst of Nazi policies had fully manifested. Franz had been drafted in 1941, sent to the Eastern Front, and had simply disappeared into the vast casualties of Operation Barbarossa. No death notification, no prisoner of war status, just silence that stretched into years. "I think he is dead," she said one evening in October as rain drummed on the barn roof. "But I cannot, what is word? Mourn? Cannot mourn properly because Wehrmacht says only missing, so I wait and I know I wait for Ghost. James shared his own history, growing up on a Montana ranch, studying engineering at university, enlisting after Pearl Harbor with the idealism of someone who had never seen war. His first combat mission had destroyed that idealism thoroughly. He described the terror of flak, the sight of B-17s exploding in midair, the knowledge that every mission was probability game with death. "Why you do this?" Clara asked. "Why you fly over Germany to drop bombs?" It was a legitimate question, asked without accusation but genuine curiosity. James considered his answer carefully. "At first, I believed we were liberating Europe from tyranny. That was the simple story. Now, after 18 missions, I think it's more complicated. Yes, Nazi Germany committed terrible crimes. But I've also dropped bombs on cities where people like you live, people who didn't choose this war. I don't have clean answers anymore. I just know that the war needs to end, and this is the role I was assigned in ending it." Clara nodded slowly. "War makes everyone victims and criminals both. Even good people do terrible things. Even in Wehrmacht, Franz was good man forced to do bad things. You are also good man doing bad things. The war is guilty, not you. It was philosophical absolution from unexpected source. Forgiveness offered by someone whose country he had been actively bombing. November 1944. The hiding continues. The weather turned cold, making the hayloft both more concealed. No one wanted to search barns in freezing temperatures, and more physically challenging. James's breath condensed in visible clouds. Clara brought extra blankets, a small metal container with coals for warmth that was dangerous for fire risk, but necessary for survival. Anna, Clara's daughter, became more involved in the conspiracy of silence. She would bring food to the barn sometimes. This small girl with serious eyes carrying bread wrapped in cloth, speaking to James in German even though he understood little. He taught her English words. Hello, bread, thank you, airplane, Montana. She taught him German phrases. Danke, wie geht es dir? Ich habe Hunger. The relationship between James and Clara was evolving into something neither had anticipated. It wasn't romance. Both were too focused on survival for that luxury. But it was intimacy born of shared danger and mutual dependence. They were learning each other's characters in ways that revealed essential qualities. Clara's quiet courage, James's resilience, both of their capacities for hope despite circumstances designed to crush it. One evening, Clara revealed something she had been concealing. "I am in danger also, not just from hiding you. The Nazi Party. They watch me. They think I am not enthusiastic enough for Reich. They want me to join women's organizations, to send Anna to Hitler Youth activities. I refuse when I can, but this makes them suspicious. They wonder if I am loyal. You're risking even more than I thought." "Yes, but what is alternative? To pretend belief in things I know are wrong? To raise Anna to believe in hate? No, I risk punishment, but I keep soul. This is worth more than safety." James understood he was witnessing extraordinary moral courage, a woman resisting totalitarianism, not through grand gestures, but through small, constant refusals to compromise conscience. It was heroism that would never be recognized with medals, but it was perhaps the most important kind. "After the war," James said carefully, "if you need to leave Germany, if things are dangerous for you because of what you've done, I can help. My family has the ranch. There's always work, always room. I mean it." Clara smiled, the first genuine smile he'd seen from her. "You repay debt that does not exist. But I remember offer. Who knows what comes after war ends?" December 1944, a near catastrophe and a departure. The Gestapo came on a morning when frost covered everything in white silence. Clara had just delivered breakfast to the hayloft when they heard vehicles in the farmyard. She looked at James with fear that had become familiar. "Stay silent. Do not move. Do not breathe loud." She descended the ladder, closing the hatch behind her. James heard her greet the visitors, heard male voices demanding entry, heard Anna crying. For 30 minutes he listened to the sounds of the farmhouse being searched. Furniture moving, doors slamming, raised voices. Then the barn. Multiple people entered, speaking German in tones of official authority. Ladders on wood. Someone was coming up to the hayloft. James had prepared for this moment. He had loosened boards in the hayloft wall weeks ago, creating an escape route to the barn roof. He moved now, silently despite the pain, slipping through the opening and onto the roof's backside where he couldn't be seen from the farmyard. The cold bit through his clothes. His ankle screamed protest. He pressed himself flat against frozen shingles, becoming part of the barn's architecture. He heard sounds from inside, hay being moved, equipment checked. The search was thorough but not exhaustive. After 10 minutes, the searchers descended. Voices in the farmyard, then engines starting, vehicles leaving. He waited 30 minutes before moving. Every minute an eternity of cold and tension. Finally, Clara's voice. "James, they are gone. You can come." Inside, she was shaking worse than he'd seen before. "They know. They do not have proof, but they know someone is here. They say they watch the farm now. They say if they find evidence of helping enemies, I will be arrested. Anna taken to state care." The stakes were now unbearably clear. James couldn't stay. His presence was death sentence for Clara and Anna. "I'm leaving tonight," he said. "My ankle is good enough. I'll head south toward Switzerland. Is 300 kilometers, through mountains, in winter. You will die. Maybe. But if I stay, you'll definitely die. I won't allow that." Clara's eyes filled with tears she wouldn't let fall. "You are not healed. Not ready. I'm ready enough. And Clara, I meant what I said. After the war, I'm coming back. For you and Anna. That's a promise. Go to Switzerland. Live. That is only promise I need." James left the farm on the night of December 15, 1944, carrying food Clara had saved, wearing civilian clothes she had somehow acquired with a hand-drawn map, showing routes to avoid major towns. Anna gave him a small wooden carving of a horse that her father had made years before. "For luck," she said, in careful English. Clara walked with him to the edge of the farm where forest began. In the darkness, she spoke with urgency. "I tell you something important. My maiden name is Bergman. Clara Bergman from Heidelberg. If after war you cannot find me as Weber in Bavaria, search for Bergman in Heidelberg. My family was there. Maybe I go there if things are bad here. I'll find you. I promise. Do not promise things war makes impossible. Just survive. That is enough." They shook hands formally. This German woman and American pilot who had become unlikely friends through circumstances neither had chosen. Then James disappeared into the Bavarian forest, beginning an evasion journey that would become its own legend. For 3 months, James moved south and west through Germany, hiding in forests, sleeping in abandoned buildings, stealing food when necessary, avoiding all human contact when possible. He witnessed the collapse of the Reich from the perspective of those living through it, refugees fleeing bombed cities, deserters hiding from military police, civilians surviving in ruins of what had been ordered society. In March 1945, in the foothills of the Alps, exhausted and half-starved, he encountered an American patrol from the 3rd Infantry Division. The war in Europe was entering its final weeks. James was evacuated to a field hospital, then to England, and finally home to Montana in May 1945, 3 weeks after VE Day. His debriefing by military intelligence focused on his evasion route and German defensive positions he had observed. He told them nothing about Clara. She had taken extraordinary risks to protect him. He would not repay that by exposing her to potential prosecution as collaborator. The report stated only that he had evaded independently through southern Germany, which was technically true, but alone in the ranch house in Montana, recovering from weight loss and exhaustion, James thought constantly of the farmhouse in Bavaria, of Clara's quiet courage, of Anna's serious eyes, of a debt unpaid and a promise made. He had survived. Now he had to find them. Montana, 1945, 1947. The long search begins. Finding someone in post-war Germany from Montana was nearly impossible. The country was divided into occupation zones. Communications were disrupted. Displaced persons numbered in millions. James wrote letters to the International Red Cross, to military government offices, to refugee assistance organizations. He provided every detail he remembered. Clara Weber, possibly Clara Bergman, Bavaria near Regensburg, daughter Anna, husband Franz, missing on Eastern Front. Months passed with no response. Then letters began returning with information that clarified nothing. Multiple Clara Webers in Bavaria, no way to confirm identity, records destroyed in bombing, bureaucracy overwhelmed by larger humanitarian crises. James's family didn't understand his obsession. His father wanted him to focus on the ranch, to settle down, to marry a local girl and put the war behind him. His mother understood better. She had seen the change in her son, the way he carried something unresolved. You can't save everyone you met during the war. she said gently one evening. I'm not trying to save everyone. Just one person who saved me. In 1947, James made a decision that seemed reckless to everyone except himself. He would return to Germany, find Clara personally, fulfill his promise. He had savings from his military service, he had GI Bill benefits he wasn't using, and he had a moral obligation that wouldn't let him rest. He told his parents he was going to Europe to find closure, which was both true and inadequate. He booked passage to Hamburg in September 1947, carrying a duffel bag with clothes, several cartons of cigarettes for currency, and a photograph of the Montana ranch he'd promised to show Clara if he ever saw her again. The Germany he returned to in autumn 1947 was transformed from the one he'd bombed in 1944. Cities were ruins, populations were displaced, the economy had collapsed into a barter system where cigarettes and coffee were more valuable than Reichsmarks. The occupation was creating new administrative structures, but chaos still defined daily existence. James traveled to Regensburg, to the approximate area where Montana Sky had crashed. The landscape was familiar but changed. Farms had different owners. Names on mailboxes were different. Everyone claimed to know nothing about Americans hidden during the war, either from genuine ignorance or protective silence. He spent weeks searching, showing the photograph of Anna that Clara had given him before he escaped, asking about a teacher named Clara Bergman or Weber. Nothing. The trail was cold, perhaps non-existent. Heidelberg, November 1947. Following Clara's instruction from that last night, James traveled to Heidelberg to search for the Bergman family. The city had survived the war relatively intact, spared from bombing due to its historical and cultural significance, but its population had swelled with refugees from destroyed cities, making any search more difficult. He went to the address Clara had mentioned, a building near the university. The apartment was occupied by strangers who knew nothing of previous residents. The building supervisor, an elderly man named Herr Schmidt, had records going back decades. Bergman, yes, I remember the family. Professor Bergman. He taught history at the university. He and his wife were here until 1942, I think. Then they moved, or perhaps they died. So many died. And there was a daughter, Clara. She married and moved to Bavaria. I don't know more. It was the first confirmation James had found that he was even searching for a real person, rather than a ghost. Energized, he went to the university, to municipal records, to church registers. Slowly, painstakingly, he reconstructed Clara's life before the war. Born 1909, father was professor, studied to be teacher herself, married Franz Weber in 1935, moved to Bavaria in 1936. But there was no current address, no indication of where she might be now. James was running out of time and money. He would need to return to Montana soon if he couldn't find her. On his last day in Heidelberg, preparing to give up, he stopped at a displaced persons office to leave his Montana address in case anyone named Clara Bergman or Weber came looking for assistance. The clerk, a tired-looking woman processing endless paperwork, took down the information without particular interest. Many people looking for many people, she said. Usually they do not find them. I know, but I have to try. The clerk looked at him with sudden attention. You are American? Yes. You look for German woman? A woman who helped me during the war. I owe her a debt. The clerk studied him for a long moment, then made a decision. There is a woman, Clara Weber. She comes here sometimes looking for her husband, Franz Weber, missing on Eastern Front. She gives address for contact. I am not supposed to share this, but she wrote an address on a slip of paper. This is in Munich. If it is same woman, you find her there. James's hands shook as he took the paper. Thank you. Munich, November 1947. The address was in a neighborhood of apartments hastily repaired after bombing, buildings that stood but bore scars. James climbed stairs worn smooth by generations of footsteps, found the apartment number the clerk had written, and knocked. The door opened. A girl, now 11 rather than 8, older but unmistakably Anna, looked at him with confusion that transformed into shock. Mama, she called. Mama, kommen Sie schnell. Clara appeared behind her daughter. She had aged more than 3 years should account for, thinner, more lines in her face, wearing clothes that had been mended multiple times, but her eyes were the same, and when she saw James, those eyes widened with an expression that cycled through disbelief, joy, and concern in seconds. James, you are alive. You are here. I promised I'd come back. They stood in the doorway, 3 years of history suspended between them. Anna broke the silence. You taught me English words, I remember. Hello, thank you. Montana. You remember. James smiled at her. Your English is much better now. Clara invited him in. The apartment was small, sparsely furnished, but clean and organized with the discipline of someone maintaining dignity, despite poverty. She made ersatz coffee from roasted grain, apologizing for not having real coffee. James gave her the carton of cigarettes he'd brought, knowing they were more valuable than money. You shouldn't have come, Clara said, though her tone suggested she was glad he had. The war is over. You owe nothing. I owe everything. You saved my life, and I made a promise. He explained his search, the months of letters, the journey to Germany, the bureaucratic maze, finally finding her through the displaced persons office. Clara listened with an expression of wonder. I thought you were dead, she admitted. I thought the escape to Switzerland was impossible. I mourn you, then I try to forget because mourning for American pilot is complicated in Germany after war. Franz? James asked carefully. Confirmed dead. Finally, in 1946, the notification comes. He died near Stalingrad in 1943. So I am widow officially now. This brings pension, but also allows you to move forward. Yes, forward. But to what? Germany is destroyed. Anna and I, we survive, but we do not live. Just survive. James took a breath. Come to Montana. Both of you. I meant the offer. I have the ranch. There's work. There's space. You can start new life. Clara's response was not immediate acceptance, but careful consideration. James, this is generous, but you do not know what you offer. Anna and I, we are Germans. In America, after this war, we would be, what is word? Pariahs. People would hate us. Some people might, but not everyone. And not in Montana, where people judge you by your work, not your accent. My family will welcome you. I've told them about you, about what you did. You told them you were hidden by German woman? I told them a civilian risked her life to protect a wounded enemy soldier, because it was the right thing to do. They understand courage when they see it. Anna, following the conversation with concentration, asked her mother a question in German. Clara responded, then translated for James. She asks if Montana has horses. I tell her yes, many horses. We run cattle, James confirmed. But we have horses too. I could teach you to ride, Anna. The girl's eyes lit up with the first enthusiasm James had seen from her. Clara saw it too, and something shifted in her expression. You are serious. This offer is real. Completely serious. I came to Germany to find you and bring you back if you'd come. I have immigration papers started. I have sponsorship documentation. I have employment guarantee. I've been preparing for this for months. Why? Clara asked, genuinely confused. Why do this for us? James chose his words carefully. Because 3 years ago, when every military rule said to leave you behind, you chose to help anyway. Because you taught me that decency transcends nationality. Because I spent 3 years watching you risk everything for someone you had no reason to help except that it was right. That kind of courage deserves recognition, not poverty and ruins. Clara's eyes filled with tears she had been holding back since he appeared at her door. This is too much. Too generous. It's a debt repaid. And, he paused, realizing he was about to say something he'd been considering for months, but hadn't articulated until now. And maybe it's more than that. Maybe I've spent 3 years realizing that the person I think about most, the person I most want to build a future with, is a German woman who saved my life in a hayloft. Clara understood immediately what he was suggesting, but not quite saying. James, this is crazy. Maybe, but good crazy. War crazy taught me that life is too short for hesitation. Munich, December 1947. Clara asked for time to think. James rented a room in a nearby pension and visited daily, helping with small tasks, bringing food that was scarce, playing with Anna in the bombed-out square that served as the neighborhood's playground. Over 2 weeks, the shape of a possible future became clear, but it wasn't the future James had originally imagined. Clara had a counter-proposal. I will come to Montana. Anna and I, we accept your offer, but not as refugees you rescue, as equals. I want to work, to earn, to contribute. You say your family needs help with ranch? I will work. Anna will go to school, learn English properly, become American, but I will not be charity case. I will be partner. Partner, James repeated, understanding the word carried more than economic meaning. Yes, partner. And if, after time, if we find that this feeling you speak of is real, not just gratitude on both sides, then—" She left the sentence unfinished, but the implication was clear. It was the most practical romantic proposal imaginable. Come to America, work together, see if partnership in survival could become partnership in life. It lacked conventional romance, but it had something more valuable: honesty about complexity, acknowledgement of mutual respect, foundation of proven courage. Partner, James agreed. Equal partners in building something new. The bureaucratic process of immigration took 4 months. James returned to Montana to prepare, then came back to Germany in spring 1948 to escort Clara and Anna to their new life. They traveled by ship from Hamburg, Anna experiencing sea travel with wide-eyed wonder, Clara facing the unknown future with the same quiet determination James remembered from the hayloft. The Montana ranch welcomed them, initially with caution that gradually warmed as Clara proved herself through work. She learned to ride horses, to manage cattle, to handle the business accounting that James's father had always struggled with. Anna enrolled in the local school, enduring some teasing for her accent but making friends through the universal language of childhood resilience. And slowly, over months and then years, the partnership James had proposed evolved into something deeper. Gratitude became respect. Respect became affection. Affection became love. The kind built not on dramatic gestures but on daily choosing to build life together. In 1950, James asked Clara to marry him, not in the dramatic style of Hollywood romance, but during evening chores after 2 years of proving that partnership worked. "We're good together," he said simply. "We should make it official." Clara smiled. "That is worst proposal I ever hear, but answer is yes." Montana, 1952, and beyond. James and Clara married in a small ceremony at the ranch with Anna serving as maid of honor, and James's entire extended family in attendance. The local newspaper ran a human interest story. War hero marries German woman he protected. The reality was more complex. She had protected him, but newspapers preferred narratives that fit conventional heroism. They built a life that honored both their pasts while creating a future. Clara brought German efficiency to ranch management, transforming the family business into a more profitable operation. James used GI Bill benefits to study agricultural engineering, modernizing their practices. Anna grew up bilingual, bicultural, eventually attending university and becoming a translator at the United Nations. The ranch became known in the community as a place that welcomed German immigrants. Several other families sponsored by Clara and James once they had established themselves. It was small-scale redemption, helping rebuild lives broken by war, proving that former enemies could become family. Clara and James would eventually have 2 more children together, sons who grew up hearing the story of how their parents met during the war. The narrative became family legend, told at gatherings, simplified for younger generations but preserving the essential truth, that courage and decency could transcend the categories war imposed. In 1969, Clara and James returned to Bavaria together, visiting the farm where they had first met. It was owned by different people now, but the barn still stood, the hayloft still accessible by wooden ladder. They climbed up together, middle-aged now, their bodies remembering the space that had sheltered both danger and the beginning of something unexpected. "I was terrified every day you were here," Clara admitted, certain we would be caught. "I knew, but you never showed it except that last morning with the Gestapo, because showing fear would make you more afraid. Someone needed to be calm." They stood in the hayloft where survival had become friendship, and friendship had eventually become love. 25 years of marriage had been built on foundation of 3 months of hiding, of mutual risk, of recognition that humanity mattered more than nationality. "Thank you," James said, "for stopping that morning, for choosing to help when it would have been safer not to. Thank you for coming back, for keeping promise when most would forget." They descended the ladder hand in hand, returning to the car that would take them back to the hotel, back eventually to Montana, back to the life they had built from ruins and promises kept. War transforms people, beliefs, and what we think possible about human connection. If this story made you reflect on how individual courage can transcend collective conflict, and how debts of honor become foundations of love, share it, because what we understand about keeping promises across impossible divides, we never forget.